Good morning, students. A very, very warm welcome. So, today we will be starting with a new chapter called the Delhi Sultanate, right? This is the third chapter of your history book. Okay. So, um, this chapter, what is the Delhi Sultanate? And we will be covering five dynasties in this particular chapter, right? So these five dynasties are basically those major dynasties that ruled during this period, right? And this period is known as the later medieval period, right? And often referred to as the medieval period of the Indian history. So the five dynasties are the Slave dynasty, the Khilji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty, the Sayyid dynasty, and the Lodi dynasty. I'll repeat: the Slave dynasty, Khilji dynasty, Tughlaq dynasty, Sayyid dynasty, and the Lodi dynasty. In this particular tutorial, I will be covering these two dynasties with you all: the Slave dynasty and the Khilji dynasty. Right. So, students, these dynasties together, right? Um, the period of these five dynasties is referred to as the medieval period of Indian history, right? And often known as the later medieval period. So now, what are the sources that we have to know about this period, right? We have inscriptions, we have coins, we have a lot of monuments, right? We so we have that there's this very nice, um the Turkish Arab tradition of recording events, right? Day by month and year when they happened, which is known as chronicles, right? So we have a lot of chronicles. We have Ziauddin Barani, Ibn Battuta, Marco Polo gave us a lot of recordings of the court proceedings, right? What happened in the court, what things were discussed on, yeah, yes, what was contemplated. So we have a lot of recordings of the court proceedings, right? Then we have travelogues written by travelers that visited the region during this particular period. And the Persian written records of histories known as tariq in singular and tawarik in plural are important sources too, right? So you have these Persian records of histories, travelogues, recordings of the court proceedings, chronicles, monuments, coins, inscriptions. All of these combined gives us good source, right? Good amount of source for this particular period. Right. So let's start the slave dynasty. Slave dynasty was also known as the Mamluk Sultan. These the kings of this particular period were known as the Mamluk Sultans. Right. So the slave dynasty, the early sultans were slaves, but because of their intelligence and hard work, they rose to power and position. Right. So the slave dynasty, the name has been given because these sultans that were ruling were actually slaves, right? And they rose to power because of their intelligence, hard work, right? So the rulers were called slaves or Mamluk Sultan, right? They were highly educated, experts in war tactics, and very good with politics, court politics, controlling the armies, war strategies, and stuff, right? So overall, they were very good packages of rulers. So the first one is Kutubuddin Aibak, right? If you recall, Kutubuddin Aibak was the one who Muhammad Ghori left his region to, right? So Muhammad Ghori left his slave Kutubuddin in charge of the territories that he had conquered in India, right? And Kutubuddin was basically Muhammad Ghori's viceroy, right? So after um, Gauri left, and in fact, even died on his way back to Afghanistan, right? Um, Kutubuddin established control and marched into Delhi, right? So what had happened was that Muhammad Gauri left Kutubuddin to rule over, to not rule, yeah, or to rule on behalf of Muhammad Gauri. rule over this area, right? And but after he died, on his way back to Afghanistan, Kutubuddin established control and marched into Delhi, right? And the famous Kila Rai Pithoda became the Sultan's home. Okay. With this, he founded the Mamluk or the slave dynasty, right? And this kingdom is particularly described as the Delhi Sultanate, right? The beginning of the Delhi Sultanate. Now, Kutubuddin Aibak was given the title of Lal Baksh or the giver of lakhs because he gave a lot to charity and he was known to be very generous and kind-hearted. So he was a very charitable man. He used to do a lot of charity, right? And he also laid the foundation of of Delhi Sultanate. Next one after Kutubuddin Aibak, we have Shamsuddin Iltutmish. Right? So Aibak Kutubuddin Aibak ruled for 4 years from 1206 to 1210. Right? From 1210 to 1236, you have Shamsuddin Iltutmish. Right? Now, this man is actually regarded as the actual founder of the Delhi Sultanate. You might be wondering why, right? Because although he came after Kutubuddin, he sent expeditions against rebel Rajputs of Gwalior, Ranthambore, Banyana, Jalore, right? And he even recovered Gwalior and Banyana. Therefore, he completed the tasks of Kutubuddin, right? And that's the reason why he is known as, often regarded as, the actual founder of the Delhi Sultanate. Another reason was that he crushed the revolts that were occurring in different parts of the region. He strengthened the boundaries and established a strong and a very consolidated sultanate. Right? He had a lot of sons, but none of them became his successor. He personally made his daughter Razia the Sultan of Delhi. Right? And this daughter is known as Razia Sultan popularly in our medieval history. Right? Um, he was not liked by the nobles. This was obviously not liked because they did not approve of a woman ruling over, right? And after Iltutmish's death, they placed Rakhnuddin Firoz Shah on the throne. But he was not at all an able king, and on popular demand of the people, Razia was made the ruler of the Sultanate again, right? Because she was really good at what she did. Okay. So about Razia Sultan, she was a very dynamic ruler, a very progressive thinker. She rode elephants, hunted, and led the army. She was very successful in establishing law and order. Her reign was short and full of problems. Why? If you think, if these good qualities existed, why was it short and full of problems? It's because the nobles hated her. The 40 nobles did not tolerate and could not tolerate a woman's rule, right? Therefore, they conspired against her and they killed her in a battle outside Delhi. Now, the period from 1240 to 1266, a lot of kings came to the throne, right? You have Nasiruddin Mahmud, another son of Iltutmish, ruled from 46 to 66. Between 40 till from 40 to 46, a lot of kings came, right? Then Nasiruddin Mahmud, another son of Iltutmish, he came. He ruled from 46 to 66, another 20 years. But at the same time, he was pretty incapable and a mere puppet. He did not. He was not a good ruler. But during his reign, Balban controlled the administration. Despite Balban was a noble, right? He was controlling the administration, and he was facing a lot of opposition because other nobles did not like the amount of power Balban wielded, right? Although he was mere controller of the administration. Now comes Ghiyasuddin Balban, right? From 1266 to 1287. approximately 21 years, right, he ruled. He came to power in 1266. He was an able noble with the and the most powerful ruler of the slave dynasty. Ghiyasuddin Balban is the most powerful ruler of the slave dynasty. He reorganized and strengthened the army, led a lot of campaigns against the local rulers and defeated them, right? Then he was guarding the northwestern borders against the Mongol raids. He introduced Persian customs of sijda, taibos, and zaminbos. Although people revolted because they believed that these customs were reserved for the Almighty, right? And nobody else. Therefore, it was anti-Islamic. But um, yeah, but even apart from that, after Balban, all the successors were very weak, and the Khilji nobles captured the throne of Delhi in 1290, right? So he ruled till 87. In the next 3 years, the successors were very weak. They could not wield their power for long, and in 1290 the Khilji nobles captured the throne of Delhi. Okay. So now, what are the qualities of becoming a good sultan? Do you see pattern here, students? Right? What do you think are the qualities that are needed to be a good sultan? Right? You need to be a strong military general. You need to have a lot of ambition. Have good expansionist policies, because if you're not expanding, even that doesn't make you a good ruler. You need to be well versed in skills of warfare and military designs, right? So that you can win wars, right? And also you need to gain the self support of nobles, military, as well as ulemas, right? This is very important to, for the nobles to support the ruler, for the military to support the ruler, and for the ulemas to support the ruler. Razia was very good with the military and the, but she was not so good with the nobles, right? And also you need a strong army to crush public uproar, rebellions, as well as to expand, right? So these qualities would make you a good sultan, and Ghiyasuddin Balban had all of these, right? But with this, the slave dynasty ends. With him, the slave dynasty ends, and now we bring into light the Khilji dynasty, right? So the Khilji dynasty, after Balban, Jalaluddin was the army officer who founded the Khilji dynasty, right? So after Ghiyasuddin Balban, you have Jalaluddin. Jalaluddin was the army officer, and he founded the Khilji dynasty. Now, these sultans ruled for 3 decades. They had ambitious expansionist policies. They were very good administrators. They consolidated a huge empire, right? They expanded the economics and market control policies. Now, we will be focusing on how they consolidated a huge empire, then the economics and the market control policies in detail in just a couple of minutes, right? Now, we know about this period lot from the Tariq-e Firoz Shahi, which is the history of Firoz Shah, written by Ziauddin Barani, which gives us a detailed, right, description of Jalaluddin and the rulers that followed. So we know a lot about the Khilji dynasty from the records of Ziauddin Barani, right, from in his Tariq-e Firoz Shahi. Now, Jalaluddin Firoz Khilji and Alauddin Khilji. Okay, so this is 1290 to 1296. He ruled for 6 years, and from 96 to 16. From right, so Jalaluddin Firoz Khilji. Now, he students wasn't a strong ruler, right? But he was very tolerant. He avoided to give harsh punishments. He was very lenient towards the Mongols. In fact, he even married one of his daughter to Ulugh Khan. Right? He was the Mongol king, and Jalaluddin Firoz Khilji married one of his daughters to Ulugh Khan. The nobles were enjoying a very powerful role under his rule. and eventually they hatched a conspiracy and killed him. Now, after him, his nephew Ali Gursab succeeded, and he was given the title of Alauddin. Right? So let's hear about Alauddin. Now, Alauddin was the most powerful Khilji ruler. Students, he became the first Turkish sultan to gain name as well as fame, right? And to build an imperial empire, right? So why is he so famous? Because A, he was very powerful, and also he was the first Turkish sultan to gain name and fame and build an imperial empire. Right. So he extended the boundaries of Delhi Sultanate beyond Vindhyas to the Deccan. Now this is huge, students, right? Because going to the Deccan had very strong presence. They were very strong empires down south, right? And he was a brilliant general, a very capable administrator. He was fond of art and literature, so he was a great patron of art and literature. And he also housed a lot of great poets and scholars in his court, like Amir Khusro and Sheikh Rukuddin. Right now, let's see how he expanded the empire, right? Why Alauddin, what made Alauddin so great, right? So he gained strategically and economically. So he conquered the Gujarat and Malwa, which gave him the access to the western ports. Students, ports are very important trade centers. They get you a lot of wealth, right? They automatically make you very wealthy, right? So he conquered Gujarat and Malwa, which gave him access to the western ports. Then he conquered Ranthambore, Chittorgarh, and Jalore in Rajasthan between 1301 and 1303. In 3 years, he was able to conquer Ranthambore, Chittorgarh, and Jalore. Right. He also captured a lot of forts of the Rajputs. Right. Next, he went to the Deccan. Right. It was a very ambitious campaign, and he was the first sultan to do so, right? The first sultan from the Delhi Sultanate so far, he was the first one to even think of going to Deccan, right? Now, for his Deccan campaign, his famous general Malik Kafur, also known as Hazar Dinari, he was basically a slave bought from Gujarat, and it was actually, 1,000 dinars were given. Therefore, he's fondly known as Hazar Dinari, right, to buy him. So his famous general Malik Kafur, he was actually a slave from Gujarat, was chosen for the Deccan campaign, and Malik Kafur successfully defeated the Yadavas of Devagiri, Kakatiyas of Varangal, um, right? And in 1310, he defeated the Hoysalas and the Pandyas, right? Um, and so this is huge. Malik Kafur actually bought a lot of war booty from these vanquished kingdoms, um, to Alauddin, and all the defeated kings were allowed to continue as rulers, but they had to give suzerainty and tribute to Alauddin, right? But by the end of his reign, the extent of empire, was so large that it could have been compared to that of Ashoka's. Right? He was ruling a large area, and for this, these are the things that made him great. Right? Now, reforms in the army. He brought in a lot of reforms as well, economic, market centered, as well as army centered. Now, he had a very well equipped, trained, disciplined, and a motivated army. He realized that, keeping the army motivated is a very a necessary thing. He initiated to have strong vigilance cell to keep watch, right? He even had spies. The army had more than 4,75,000 horsemen. He paid good wages and salaries to soldiers because he realized that, only if the soldiers are happy can I continue with my expansionist policies. So he paid handsome and regular salaries to all the soldiers. He made arrangements for their trainings. Soldiers were always well equipped with all the artillery and everything. He had spies who kept the Sultan informed of all the new developments. The horses were branded so that another horse doesn't come from outside, and you know um, also to keep check on what is happening where, right? And a full description of each soldier known as Chehra was maintained, right? So he had full description of each and every soldier in his army. Then the economic measures are again very interesting. So, Mongol invasions and the internal revolts led to an increase in the cost of maintaining large armies, right? It was because of these invasions and the internal revolts that he had to maintain large army. Uh, Although Khilji ensured that the soldiers would lived well, survived well, they were given good salaries, right? When it came to land, so land under cultivation was measured. Uh, and land was divided and the revenue was paid according to fertility. So the the, the fertile the land, accordingly the revenue was fixed. Okay. So, and also what he did was that the fertile land between Ganga and Yamuna, he increased the tax of this land um, to half the produce. Although he makes sure that no other extra tax was imposed on any of the peasants, right? He audited the accounts of his officers, fixed the prices for the articles of food, and enforced them vigorously. So all the articles of food had fixed prices, and he would enforce that people don't get into malpractices or charge higher or lower the rate, right? He built vast storages, right? Sold them at retail prices. Everything was priced, right? A fixed price for articles of food, and he also enforced them rigorously. Now, what happened was that everything was priced. This was known as his market control policy, right? He also introduced the subsidized rationing system. Rations were subsidized, and especially in times of scarcity, which ensured that everyone there was never a situation of scarcity in the market, right? So, for example, the corn was sold at fixed rates. Nobody was allowed to buy more than half a mound of corn at a time. Now, because of this, even during times of drought, right, grain was always plentiful in Delhi and the surrounding areas, right? This also ensured that the grain was never hoarded, commodity supply was ensured, right? So that often people, what they do is that in times of scarcity, they keep things to themselves so that later on they can sell it in black or at higher prices. But because of this, there was never a situation of hoarding, or there was never dearth of grains. It was always available in plenty, right? Because of his system of pricing everything, and because of his subsidized rationing, right? He also started a special department under Shahana Imandi, and the this person's duty was to prepare a list of prices, register the merchants, keep an eye on activities, right? Look after the royal granary, supervise the markets, and keep a constant vigil on weights and measures. All of this was to ensure that nobody in the system, right, was engaged in any of the malpractices, and people would know what to expect, right? This the All of these things, students, it shows greatness and maturity, right? Therefore, it is very safe to conclude that the administrative, economic, and military reforms of Khilji show that he was not just military genius, but an efficient administrator as well. But after his death, a lot of succession broke out, and Khusro Malik was the last Khilji ruler. Ghiyasuddin defeated him and started the Tughlaq dynasty. Now, with this, we end the part one. Thank you so much. In the next part, we'll be covering the next three, right? I hope you all enjoyed and have a nice day. See you all soon.